What is going on, everybody? Hope everybody's enjoying their Sunday so far. Selection Sunday, it was definitely a long day, just of discussion and debate from ESPN, just dragging it out as they always do here on the show. But we are back here on SEC Talk. We're going to be recapping two of the big games that happened this past week, both with the SEC and the Big Ten. But let's be honest with you, really the outside the conference champions. I mean, you had Kennesaw State get it done on Friday. You had Western Michigan in the MAC championship, and then you had Duke taking down Virginia. So you did have some really good games, but most of those games were blowouts. So we'll talk briefly about our two big conference championship games. And as always, we will talk about the college football playoff bracket. It was released earlier today. We'll go through the brackets, some of the first round matchups. We won't pick the matchups. That'll happen in next week's show. And then we'll get into our fourth annual SEC end of season awards show. So probably not going to be as lengthy as last week's show. It was almost 2 hours. Hopefully we can keep it around an hour this time because I already did a show earlier doing a live reaction of the college football playoff bracket. So if you want my earlier thoughts, go ahead and check out that video. But Wade, how was your weekend? This was the first really weekend like without a full slate of football, but having football on the table. Maybe you did some early holiday shopping. I don't even know if you want to call it early anymore because Christmas is just around the corner now.
Yeah, a little bit of each. Had a Christmas party on Friday. That was, of course, a lot of fun. And then just kind of had the games on in the background, sat down and watched the nightcap between Indiana and Ohio State, and it sure was a treat. So yeah, definitely a lot to talk about there. I mean, college football does seem to run through the SEC, but we do have to give the guys up north some credit. They've been playing some really good football, so we'll get a little coverage on that for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. But before we do dive into those two games, as we always do here on the show, we want to get our viewers involved. So if you have any questions pertaining to your team get into a specific bowl game, are you happy with the selection where your team is heading, whether that's the playoff or the other bowl games that we'll talk about here over the next couple of weeks? So feel free to leave us a comment in the comment section down below. Like I mentioned, as always, we are live both on Facebook and on YouTube, so you can just drop us a comment and I'll get to it at the end of our show, maybe during it if it's a pressing topic. But we always get to your comments at the end of the show. So let's go ahead and dive into first the SEC championship game, and this wasn't even close. I know that three of us were on Georgia. I was just sticking to my pick because, I picked Alabama in the preseason. I knew that Georgia was going to come to play in this one, and yet they did, 28-7 over the 9th-ranked Crimson Tide. And like I mentioned, this wasn't really close at all. And if Georgia could play like this, especially on defense, it's going to be hard for anybody who's in this 12-team playoff to really beat them. Alabama, without Jam Miller, they got -3 rushing yards, and that's been Alabama's problem. If you're with us last week, Chris really brought up a good point of the struggles of Alabama's rushing attack. And without Jam Miller, they weren't able to get it done through the rush, and they crossed midfield like one or two times. And this one, Ty Simpson had an okay game. He did have that key interception that really changed the start of the second half. But it was Georgia. They went up 21-0. Alabama was able to get that touchdown to make it 21-7. You thought at that point maybe it would be a little bit closer. And then after that, Georgia was able to get another touchdown in that one. Nate Frazier had a big game. Zachariah Branch had that key touchdown to really put this game out of reach. But it's Georgia, who was 0-4 against Alabama prior to this SEC championship game. They finally slayed the dragon in this one. And Alabama, as we will get into, I'm sure everybody knows at this point, Alabama, this loss did not mean anything. So, Wade, I know we want to talk about this game, but, going to conference championships, they got to matter for something, obviously, on the winner. But you look at a team like BYU, who got pretty much blown out like Texas Tech. Alabama got blown out by Georgia. They didn't even move. So what are your thoughts on that, and what are your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I mean, Ty Simpson just hasn't played to that level that we saw him play in the first matchup of these teams. I mean, he looked like he was on his way to winning the Heisman and being drafted in the top 5 picks when he took down the Bulldogs earlier this year. But they did a good job of adjusting defensively, which you come to expect with this Georgia bunch. And they really had him seeing ghost out there. I think he threw 2 interceptions. So kudos to Georgia. Alabama just looked flat all day. I mean, they had a chance to get an early 7-0 lead, and Ryan Williams dropped the ball in the end zone.
It's
I
been the
think
story of the season for him.
yeah, I mean, it's been a rough year for him. I mean, I think that could have changed the narrative of this game, but I think that the Bulldogs, used it as a chance to get settled in, and they really seized the momentum. And like you said, Alabama has not been able to run the football. Daniel Hill, I mean, he looks like he could be the future, but for now, he's going to need some help with Jam Miller if he's back for the playoffs or whoever else it might be. But yeah, going to your point here, I mean, this is an ugly loss. It could have been worse. I mean, Georgia knew they were going to win. They wanted to conserve their players and avoid any injuries going into the playoffs. So they kind of let up off the gas. I mean, this could have been 35-0 or 35-7 very easily. And I think at that point, maybe the committee could have moved Alabama down at least, maybe not out. But I don't think that this game was ever as close as the score indicates, just being 21 points. I mean, it felt more like a 30-point loss. But nonetheless, I mean, I think Alabama is still one of the more talented teams in the country for sure. So if they can put it all together, this isn't an end all for them, but I think it speaks more to Georgia. I think this team is rounding into really, really good form at the right time.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, but we'll see both of these teams in the college football playoff. We'll get into their specific matchups and where we see their paths here coming up later on in the show. But let's go on now to the next one and our last game that we are going to be talking about and highlighting, and that's the Big Ten Championship, number 1 versus number 2. It's not always that you see a 1 versus 2 matchup in the conference championship, but Indiana wins a grudge match 13-10 in this game, and I pretty much thought that this was going to be a lower scoring game. Didn't think it was going to be this lower scoring, but two of the more talented defenses in all of college football were on site for this one. Indiana definitely impressed me. Ohio State, for them, this is, they lost 13-10 last season. They're, heading into the playoff, and they won the national championship. So maybe this is omen what happened last year. But let's just go back to the game here. Ohio State did get the ball, and Indiana was able to get an early interception, was able to get a field goal off that to make it 3-0. Ohio State was able to respond after that with a touchdown to make it 7-3. And then both teams traded field goals before halftime to make it 10-6. And Indiana's defense really stepped up and rose to the occasion in the second half as they shut out Ohio State, which hasn't really happened at all this season, especially with guys like Bo Jackson, C.J. Donson in the backfield. Then you got the 1-2 punch, the receivers, Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith. Julian Zayn and Fernando Mendoza was definitely the storyline in this one. It felt like the winner of this game was going to win the Heisman as well. And Fernando Mendoza had a slow start, but he was able to really have a couple of key throws, especially one to Elijah Surratt to put the Hoosiers up 13-10. And Ohio State had a couple of opportunities to really tie this game, especially late in the game. When they had a 4-for-1, they ended up going for the field goal and ended up shanking it to the left. It was a 27-yard field goal. I mean, if you ask Jake Felding, 99 times out of 100, you probably would make that kick, but crazier things have happened in the Big Ten Championship. And Indiana was able to drain the clock, a couple of key catches, and Indiana holds on 13-10. As you'll see there, they have rightly earned the number 1 seed, Ohio State. I was talking about this earlier. We could get into the college football playoff discussion, so I'll hold like the 1 versus 2 and 3 even scenario in this one. But we were split. 2 of us, I believe it was you and Chet, who were on Indiana. Chris and I were on Ohio State. Indiana, to me, definitely caught my eye, especially on the defensive side. I think that a lot of people were just saying the majority of the season for both teams. Like, both teams didn't really play anybody the whole entire year. Indiana's best win to date was Oregon now that they added this one. And if Indiana can play like this on defense paired with the weapons that they have on offense, watch out.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't think they reached their full potential offensively. I mean, I think they knew this was going to be a low-scoring game, and they were going to try to bleed the clock. But but every now and then we did see Mendoza take a shot downfield, and they were selective with them. But man, they hit him. They sure did. And even more impressively, they lost their second leading receiver on like maybe the second drive of the football game. So this is a deep team. I think they can run the ball against most people. It's very hard to do that against Ohio State. So that will give them another dimension. And then the defense, like you said, I mean, it had looked good against their schedule, but maybe the best offense they played was Oregon and a really underwhelming Penn State team. So we didn't know what to expect, when they would run into a juggernaut like Ohio State, but the defense held true. I think Ohio State kind of shot themselves in the foot, though. They did go for it on fourth down deep in Indiana territory a couple times. If they would have taken the points, this game was going to overtime, no doubt. But Indiana did miss a field goal as well. So just how it shook out, I think that the winner of this game undoubtedly deserved the number one spot. We'll get into it here in a second, but I thought the loser would slip to the third spot. But I'm not mad about it because both of these teams, they look to be complete teams, and it was just Indiana's night.
Yeah, absolutely. So this was definitely a treat. I know that a lot of people, this is a terrible matchup. I just think that, sometimes you get these big time matchups and it's a defensive game. You don't have to have like a 50 to 48 type of game for it to have a big type game. But these were two elite teams on both sides of the ball, and that was definitely displayed on Saturday night. Now let's move on to our pick results. Wade and Chet at the top of the leaderboard. 8-1 and 7-2 is pretty fantastic to look at the conference championship. There are some tough matchups both on Friday and Saturday, and our guest picker 5-4 was tough sledding. He did have a couple of games that went the other way, like North Texas and UNLV. You did pick Kennesaw State, got that one right. All of us picked Virginia. All of us were wrong. Duke ended up winning that and causing absolute chaos. And both of us went 5-4. And I think that we are going to be eyeing another guest picker either for next week's show for the playoff or the other bowl games. We'll probably try to get either one or two more. Maybe get one for each. If we could do that, hopefully we can get somebody on here for both weeks. But Chris, I'll have to go back, look at the overall standings. I'm pretty positive, though, that Elise is still number one. But we will see. Yeah, we will see if anybody could top that. But we will continue on with our pick'ems into the Bulls season. All right, let's go ahead and dive into, before we get into the 12-team playoff, we do have our final college football playoff top 25 poll. It's the last time that we need to look at a college football top 25 poll. We're probably not going to even bother to look at the end of the season poll. But just looking at it, number 3, Georgia, 6, Ole Miss, 7, Texas A&M, 8, Oklahoma, 9, Alabama, 13 is Texas, and 14, Vandy. I don't want to look at the playoff teams just yet, but let's talk about the two other teams, Texas and Vanderbilt. Now, I know that they got left out, but how would you grade both seasons for Texas and Vandy?
I mean, I think that for Vanderbilt, an A+, this was the encore act to last year's surprise season, but in some ways it felt more surprising because they weren't like a Cinderella team. They were like a favorite in most of their games. And for Texas, I think you got to say it's a little disappointing given this team had the preseason number 1 ranking, but I'll say this, at the end of the season, there's not many teams that would want to line up and face Arch Manning in Texas. It just took a little bit longer. And I think, I kind of sniffed it out earlier in the season. I think that people just were too early on Arch, and they thought he was just going to step right in and dominate. I think he's going to be really, really good next year. He just needed some time to develop and get his feet underneath him. He didn't play for 2 seasons, so that's tough as it is. And honestly, in high school, he didn't play at the top level of Louisiana football. He played on a smaller team that didn't play against Division I opponents. So I think he was a little bit more raw than people thought. And that's how Texas's season went. They lost some games early and then started playing really good football late. We saw them beat A&M. So they're a team that's going to be in good shape next year, just a little short this year.
Yeah, just looking back at the preseason poll, I think we had 10 or 11 teams to start the season. I want to see if you can guess what teams from this poll are missing from the preseason poll from the SEC.
LSU for sure. Um, I think that South Carolina was in there.
Mm-hmm.
Florida was in there.
Yep.
Um, I don't think Missouri was in it initially.
No, they were not. I think you got it. I think you got it all.
Okay. I was thinking maybe there was one more.
I believe it was just Florida,
Auburn?
South Carolina, and LSU. I think that Missouri was receiving votes to start the season. They got it in
Okay.
like pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, all those teams, we'll talk about them on one segment in just a little bit
Yeah.
for good reason. But yeah, I mean, all these teams, look, they were pretty good from start to finish. Um, A&M and Oklahoma, Ole Miss, I mean, really consistent groups, definitely surprises, I would say. But at the end of the day, Georgia reigns supreme, and
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's surprised about that.
Yep, after all the chaos, Georgia is going to be the top seed out of all the SEC teams. But let's go ahead and dive into the 12-team bracket. So we have this nice little graphic provided to us by the college football playoff themselves. But number one is Indiana, the Big Ten champs. I mean, 13-0. Really, no disagreements from there. Like I mentioned earlier in my live reaction show, this is where I kind of thought that I was going to go the opposite way, that I thought it would have been the SEC champion over the Big Ten runner-up. But like you mentioned, I mean, I'm okay with either or. But we do see number 2 seed Ohio State. Their one loss coming in the Big Ten championship to Indiana. This is still an elite team. Whoever runs into them is going to have to play their best game. SEC champs is Georgia, another one-loss team, and Texas Tech, the number 4 seed. They won the Big 12 championship for the first time in school history. It's crazy that they didn't win it that one year, like in that 2008 year where they had like a three-way tie. It was ended up being like Oklahoma and Missouri, I think, that one year, and Texas Tech was out of that. So go down to the 2 and 3 seed. Do you agree with Ohio State being over Georgia? And do you agree with pretty much the top 4? Because I think the committee pretty much did it as best as they could.
Yeah, I mean, I think they got the right 4 teams, no doubt. I would have rewarded Georgia for winning the SEC and avenging the loss to Alabama. Um, and it's not like they won by 2 points. I mean, they won by 21. They could have won by 30, like we talked about. So I would have put Georgia at number 2, Ohio State at number 3. But if it shakes out as it should, you're going to see those teams probably square off in the quarterfinals, or the semifinals rather. So I guess we'll see. From here, you got to beat whoever's in front of you. So it doesn't really matter. Both teams are getting the first round bye. If anything, it kind of riles Georgia up a little bit, which might not be a good thing for Ohio State.
Kirby Smart's just going to come up with some like doubters, like that one year where they went like undefeated, like, oh, people are picking us in the preseason to go 6-6. But the only thing that I thought that they were going to do, like, put Georgia at the 2 spot because they avenged their only loss on the season. But like I mentioned, putting Ohio State at 2, I'm not really going to have like a hoopla about it. But looking at the bowl games wise, Texas Tech will play in the Orange Bowl, Indiana in the Rose Bowl. Georgia will be going to the Sugar Bowl, and Ohio State is going to be playing in the Cotton Bowl. So now let's go into our first round matchups. We had the number 5 seed. We'll go through seed by seed why, then we'll go specifically to the matchups. The number 5 seed is Oregon Ducks, so another Big Ten representative. Their one loss coming to Indiana. They cruise pretty much to the majority of their schedule. I mean, you could say, like, what's their one good win? Maybe USC or Iowa. Their resume is okay, stacked up to the top 4. But Oregon definitely going to be a tough out there. We do have number 6 seed Ole Miss. They did not move a muscle without Lane Kiffin or not, but Ole Miss is the number 6 seed, 11-1. Lone loss to Georgia. Well, they could definitely avenge that if they get to the Sugar Bowl. And imagine an Ole Miss versus Georgia Sugar Bowl game. New Orleans would be bumping on January 1st. A lot of alcohol sales that weekend, if there wasn't already. But we do have number 7 Texas A&M. Another SEC representative. So what are your overall thoughts on 5, 6, 7, and 8?
I think you could argue the order between Oregon, A&M, Ole Miss. I think that you could have them any number of ways. I'm a little bit more partial to A&M. I thought that they would be potentially
Yeah.
the 6th seed, but if you think about it, I mean, they could have been the 5 seed. Like you said, who did Oregon really beat? But I think the committee really valued the Big Ten this year, so I'm not surprised. Um, and I know we're going to talk about their opponents here in a second, but I think the committee could have avoided some rematches, given how
Yeah.
close those teams were ranked. I
See,
think you
that's
could
what
have.
I thought the committee was going to do. I said earlier that I thought that Texas A&M was going to jump Ole Miss because Ole Miss beat the doors off of Tulane already, and
Right.
I thought that they wouldn't want that matchup. And I thought that Texas A&M's resume overall was better
They beat Notre
than Ole
Dame
Miss. I mean, the Notre Dame win trumps every Ole Miss win. I mean,
and
they're
Oregon
putting.
win,
Did you see
really?
on the graphic? They're putting LSU as a key win. Like LSU's 7-5 this season. They're not a key win. I
Yeah.
guess it's just a logo, but that's really the only thing that I would have done just to avoid. Honestly, don't even get like why A&M dropped so much of losing to Texas. I thought that they would have went at 5. Then you would have Ole Miss at maybe 7, and then Oregon at 6. But I think that if you ask Oregon, they would rather their matchup than play a team like Miami. But Texas A&M, they do get a home game, which we'll get into there. Let's roll through the rest of the seeds. Alabama did get into the field of 12, even with the loss in the SEC championship game. They did not move both in the poll as well as the seeding. So Alabama, we'll get into the matchups here. I just want to go through the seedings, and then we'll go through the matchups here really quickly. Alabama is the 9 seed. Miami gets in. Thank God that they got in because there's going to be a storm of people from the 305, especially them not getting in because in week number 1, Miami beat them. I know the score was close, but if you watch that game in week 1, Miami dominated that game pretty much through 3 quarters. And then you have the 2 group of 5 teams. So with the champs out of the American Tulane, they were the highest group of 5. But since Duke did beat Virginia and Duke was an 8-5 football team, James Madison was the next highest group, not a group of 5. They were just the highest overall conference champions. Now, if they would have said the highest Power 4 champions from the get-go, it would have been the Duke Blue Devils. But since it's just a generic conference champion highest rated, James Madison does get into the field of 12. So let's first go into Miami getting in. Do you agree with the Canes getting in over the Fighting Irish?
Yeah, I've been advocating for Miami all week. I mean, the resume is almost identical, and then the tiebreaker is the head-to-head win. Like, I just don't get why it was a debate between these two teams. Now, if you want to debate Alabama against both of those teams,
Sure.
absolutely, there's a question to be had. But to me, Miami was always in, and the ACC got bailed out. I mean, the ACC has some weird tiebreaker rules. Obviously, the best team in their conference did not win it. They didn't even get a chance to play for it. But at the end of the day, I think that the ACC gets their best representative in, and I think they're properly seated. I think that if they had won the conference championship, they probably would be in the 9 spot. But I think all was right at the end of the day for Miami.
See, what I don't like, I see this is why these Tuesday shows and these rankings just need to go away. Because the last couple of weeks, the committee had Notre Dame over Miami, like 2 spots ahead of them every single week. Miami was even behind BYU at one point before BYU ended up losing to Texas Tech on Saturday. But they were like 2 or 3 spots behind them. And Notre Dame just continuously was to rank. And all of a sudden today, there's like, oh, head to head now
Did they
matters.
forget they played?
Yeah, they must have forgot with all their like freaking 32-inch
Yeah.
TVs that they have in freaking Grapevine, Texas. I'm so over the committee and all this BS that we have to deal with. I agree with Kirk Herbstreit. He said himself, these Tuesday shows are just full of bullshit and ramble. I just think that just get rid of the rankings. Just honestly, I don't even need like the rankings every single week. Just I don't know. This show today, even like, do we
I think
really
that's
need three
fine. I
hours of
just
just rambling? Like, we didn't even get the bracket till 20 minutes until the freaking show, which is just stupid. We don't need this like hoopla for 20 and 30 minutes to show us a bracket. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. Like you see March Madness, they get to it. It's a big bracket. It's an even bigger bracket too. So that's for another time though. But we do have Tulane and James Madison. Now, for years, I was a big proponent of the group of five. I think at this point, I mean, I think that a lot of people are just over the group of five getting in at this point. I could deal with one, but two getting in is a little overserved, especially with the years that Vanderbilt, BYU, and even Texas had. Like a team like James Madison, no credit to them, but they have zero Power Four wins on their season. I get it, like last season when Boise State, at least Boise State did have a quality win to their resume. But what do you think about the group of fives getting automatic bids?
Well, I think the rule that they have in place is fine. I like, given the top, what is it, five highest ranked conference champions a spot.
Mm-hmm.
I think that works well, but the ACC shot itself in the foot this year. I mean, they did not get the right title game matchup set up, and they didn't hold up their end of the deal. I mean, the way the system's set up is for the Power Four conference champions to make it, and the highest non-Power Five champion to make it, or Power Four champion to make it. The ACC opened the door for a second non-Power Four team to make it, and so they, to me, have all the blame to hold. And then somehow they get their best team in there anyways as an at-large. So the ACC screwed it for everybody this year. Had Miami played, for a conference championship last night and got in on their own merit as a conference champion, we wouldn't have James Madison in there, and we would have Notre Dame in there. And I think all would have been right. So I don't think the rule is wrong. I think that you could even keep it at 12. And most years you're going to get the right field. But I will say this. I think that two things. Notre Dame, I mean, you got to join a conference. And the ACC's offered you to join the conference many times. So as the Big Ten.
Like the 2020 year, they won it.
They could easily have been playing.
Well, they play half of the conference anyways.
Right. Just play a couple more games. They could have been playing last night against Virginia for a spot to jump Miami, and I would have had no qualms with it.
Yep.
But you can't lose to a team in the ACC and then not be in a conference and complain that you fell. I think that the injustice for Notre Dame was that they were just falsely ranked for like the last month. I mean, why were they ever ahead of Miami? That was absurd.
See, that's what I don't get about these.
But I think truly the committee thought that Miami was going to play.
They gave me the excuse of like, oh, Miami lost like 2 or 3, so they were like at 18 at one point. Notre Dame was 9. They weren't neck and neck, but whenever they're neck and neck, they were even neck and neck last week, and they were still ahead of them. I just don't get like the 360 turn. Like if you are setting this precedent that Notre Dame is ahead of Miami, and you come here on the selection show, either you are pressed. Maybe they're looking at Twitter and everybody's like, oh, why is Notre Dame ahead of Miami when Miami beat them? I don't know. This whole system is broken. I mean, we had the BCS with the computers, and now we have the committee who doesn't know what the hell that you're talking about. You have Arkansas's AD. Well, that's great. We really want Arkansas's AD really making some choices when he hired the guy that most Arkansas fans didn't even want.
I think if you go to 16, you kind of iron out all of that. I think you can still have the rule of the highest 5 conference champions. That's going to get you a team like Tulane in there every year. And okay, maybe some years it's worth it. Maybe some years it's not. I don't think you're ever going to see a situation like this again, where 2 Power 4 teams get in, or a group of 5 teams get in. Like I said, this was the ACC dropping the ball in their selection criteria for the conference championships. I think if we're going to use this ranking system, the tiebreaker's got to be the poll for who plays in the conference championship game, or else you're going to have situations like this. But I think if you went to 16, then truly you're going to have the top 15 teams playing in there, and then probably a group of 5 team that, hey, they might be in that top 16 on their own merit, like a Boise State last year, or they're a team like Tulane where they're ranked 20th and they get a little bit of a boost to the 16 spot. But it is a little absurd to let 2 teams in, one at 20th in the country and one at 24th in the country, and leave out, the 8 to 10 teams ahead of them in the rankings. That's a little crazy, but
especially late in
I
the
think
game.
if you go to 16, you kind of get the best of both worlds, and you don't add an extra round. You don't add another week to the schedule. No other sport in collegiate sports does the one seed get a bye week, anyways. I mean,
Mhm.
the one seed's got to play the 16 seed in the March Madness bracket. LSU's got to battle it out in extra innings against Arkansas Little Rock in the regionals. I
Yeah,
mean, nobody else gets a free pass. Why not
true.
make James Madison go to Indiana next week and get this party started?
Yeah, that's true. So let's go ahead and get to the specific matchups in the first round. So we do have the 5 seed. That's the host. So if you're not familiar with the bracket, the 5 through 8s are going to be the home teams. So Oregon will be hosting the number 12 seed, James Madison. We do have 1 or 2 matchups here. First, an SEC showdown. We saw this like a couple of weeks ago in
I'm okay with
Tuscaloosa.
that rematch. I like it.
Yeah, I like that too. That's going to be some fireworks. So I'm glad that's the Friday game, getting things started there. Oklahoma, the 8 seed, number 9 seed, Alabama. Oklahoma did win that matchup earlier, 23-21. A blocked field goal was a big part of that. Another rematch. This wasn't so appetizing earlier this season. 45-10. Rebels won this one over the Green Wave. I mean, this honestly belongs on the CW. If you're to be honest with you, this is going to be a blowout. I mean, if we're gonna go through like what's our best matchup here, but I just don't really see this one being close. Number 6, Ole Miss at versus number 11, Tulane. But hell, if Tulane can find a way, they'll be going back to New Orleans to face off against Georgia, which would definitely be something. But I just don't really see it. And then why the hell is this game at 11? It's the best game of the day. Why do there's no game? I mean, we have Oregon versus James Madison. I know it's on the West Coast, but can we flip flop them? Like, come on, like let these boys play at 9 a.m. That's the only gripe that I have with the scheduling. We have number 7 Texas A&M hosting number 10 Miami. So out of all those first round matchups, what catches your eye and what are you looking most forward to watching?
Probably that 10-7 game.
Yeah.
Like you said, I think A&M got a little disrespected, fell all the way down to the 7 spot, and then they get to play Miami, the team that half the country hates that's in there.
Sure, they're gonna have
Half
a
the
chip on
country's
their
happy
shoulder.
they're there.
That's for sure.
So we saw these teams play a couple years ago. They're much better than they were at that time. So I'm excited to see some new blood in the playoff here with Marcel Reed and A&M.
Yeah, I think your headliners are the 9, 8, and 10 and 7. No disrespect to the group of 5 teams, but I just don't see that. We'll obviously get to our picks next week of the playoff. We'll have our picks for the first round and the quarterfinals leading all the way to the national championship games. In the SEC, we do have 5 teams. That's definitely more than we had last season, but one of them is going to be knocked out already with Bama and Oklahoma matching up. That is our bracket reaction. Now let's go into the second portion of our show, and that is our 4th annual SEC Talk Award Show. So we started this a couple of years back. Thought that we would, give some awards, especially to our SEC fantasy players, as well as our other players and coaches, our game of the year. So many different nominees for this one. So how we did it, I know that in year number 1 we had Twitter, but we don't really use Twitter anymore. Facebook got rid of polls, so you can't really do polls anywhere. So we just did away with it. We just made our
committee,
own.
baby, the committee.
Yeah, we're the committee. But we actually know what we're watching most of the time. But what Wade and I are going to do, we're going to alternate categories. So I'll go through one nominees, get the award winner. So I will go ahead and lead us off with the quarterback of the year nominees. So we did 3 players. I know in the past we did 5, but it felt like that was just too many players. I know that, especially in our first year. I mean, we had a couple of players and they were getting like 1% of the vote. And I thought Wade and I brought up a good point. Let's just go to 3. And these are 3 most of the notable quarterbacks of the year. First up is Marcel Reed, the quarterback of Texas A&M. Now, a phenomenal year for the Aggies, and this was definitely a big part led by Marcel Reed. Now, Reed definitely had some roller coaster ride. He had some bad games. He had some good games. Probably his best game was against LSU in Baton Rouge. Had a couple of rushing touchdowns. Had a couple of big throws to Casey Concepcion. But Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver was definitely a huge part of Marcel Reed having a big season. Same with Diego Pavia of Vanderbilt. I am sure that Diego Pavia is going to be a finalist for the Heisman. Not sure if he's going to win it. It's probably going to go to Fernando Mendoza, but Diego Pavia continues to shine. I know you had him SEC fantasy for like two of the past 3 weeks, and he had over 400 yards both times. So he can not only do it in the rush and also the pass too. The one guy that I did not think that we would have as quarterback of the year nominee, and that is Trinidad Chambliss of Ole Miss, coming from Ferris State. We thought heading into the season it was going to be Austin Simmons' team, but Austin Simmons did suffer an injury. Trinidad Chambliss got his first start, I believe, against Kentucky, if I'm correct on that. And the rest of the way, it was the Trinidad Chambliss show. And this offense has been one of the best in the SEC. Obviously, you have Kwan Lacey in the backfield and Harrison Wallace leading the receivers. So Ole Miss just continued to flourish of this offense. So Reed, Pavia, and Chambliss were our three nominees. And the winner is going to be Diego Pavia of Vanderbilt. He probably would have won it maybe last season, but this season he really turned it on like a Johnny Manziel, pretty much 2.0. But what are your overall thoughts? I know you and I were pretty agreement on Diego Pavia. What are your overall thoughts on Pavia's season and winning this award if he's actually watching Zero, which you'll probably not?
Well, I think Diego, brought it up another level this season. Last season was kind of the Cinderella story for Vanderbilt. This year, Vanderbilt, we didn't know what to expect from them. We thought maybe they would kind of be a one-hit wonder, but they really transformed themselves into a contender because of this guy right here.
Yep.
Teams just really struggled to game plan around him. He had some games where, he only threw for 100 to 150 yards and he would gut it out with his legs. But by the end of the year, he was slaying teams through the air and on the ground, throwing for 350 yards, running for 150. So really just saving his best for last. And yeah, now he's in the conversation for the real Heisman too. So job well done, Diego. I remember us covering him 3 years ago before he was even in the conference. Yep. When he beat Auburn.
We've been talking to him for years and years now.
Yeah, so he's been on the show for a while, and I think it's every bit of a deserving winner here for the quarterback of the year.
Yeah, I'm glad we're going to send him off, and maybe he gets one more time to shine in SEC fantasy. We'll get into that matchup there. But Roy, let's go ahead and get into the running backs. Why don't you take us through the nominees and the overall winner?
Yeah, so we have 3 really good running backs here. I'm sure y'all are familiar with them. We've used them a lot on SEC fantasy. I do want to just point out that certainly fantasy results play a factor in our decision, but for these position groups, we're looking at the on-field product. We will have an award at the end that is our SEC fantasy MVP, and that is strictly off of the fantasy performance here on the show. So this is a combination of things. It's about putting up yards, which is what our fantasy league is built off of, but it's also about their value to their team and where their team would be without them and how they fit into the offense. So I think all of these guys really embody that. I think their teams run through them very literally. And I think nobody can say that more than the Missouri Tigers with their guy, Ahmad Hardy. I mean, he came in to this season as a newcomer, as a transfer from UL Monroe, and he was ripping off 200-yard games right off the bat. So that will be our running back of the year, Ahmad Hardy out of Missouri.
Yeah, so big congratulations to Ahmad Hardy. I think it was very close between Lacey and Ahmad Hardy. I know that we didn't have like Mike Washington on this list. He was really good throughout the whole entire year, but Jadon Ball too. I mean, as bad as Florida was, especially in offense for the majority of the year, but ultimately Ahmad Hardy, just consistency after consistency for the Missouri Tigers. So Hardy is the first running back of the year. We've really had some talented running backs, both at Missouri. This is now the second Missouri running back to win this award. Cody Schrader, a couple of years back, did win this award. So Missouri is just stockpiling these RB of the year winners. Now let's move on to the wide receiver of the year nominees. There was definitely a lot of candidates that we could have got into this pool, but we had to slim it down to three. Jeremy Bernard of Alabama. I think that he was very much the wide receiver one. Obviously, paired with the struggles of Ryan Williams. Not to say Ryan Williams didn't have that bad of a year, but Jeremy Bernard, I mean, even in week number one, I know it was against Florida State. He really shined in most of Alabama's wins. It was Jordan Bernard being, Ty Simpson's favorite target. Chris Brazzell. I mean, Tennessee just continues to produce these wide receiver ones. Joey Aguilar and Chris Brazzell's connection was definitely there. And finally, KC Concepcion. You probably could have put Mario Craver, but I feel like KC Concepcion not only did it in this offense, but in special teams. He had so many big plays. His punt return touchdowns that really sealed the deal and why Texas A&M is where they are. So this is a very tough decision, but we ended up going with KC Concepcion, the Texas A&M wide receiver. So that is definitely a big accomplishment for Mr. Concepcion, one of the key transfers for Texas A&M. So Wade, what are your thoughts on KC Concepcion? I know that you and I both had him on our SEC fantasy teams, but he was definitely an added boost to this A&M offense.
Absolutely. I mean, this was probably the biggest impact transfer. He was highly sought after. I was a little bit confused why he picked A&M at first. He even said it in an interview that, he had to vet Marcel Reed before he committed there because he thought this was going to be a read option offense that ran the ball a bunch. Of course, they had Le'Veon Moss coming back and a really good running attack. But we saw this A&M offense transform itself through its transfer receivers in Craver and Concepcion. And man, it was a really good season. I think that it was a down year for a receiver within the conference. We didn't have a Jamar Chase. We didn't have a Trey Harris. We didn't have just a dominant receiver this year. But KCC was a guy that was always making plays. And like you said, on special teams too. I mean, he had some electric punt returns. So I'm really looking forward to seeing him in the playoff.
Yeah, and this is the first Texas A&M receiver to accomplish this award so far of this duration of this 4-year award show. So congratulations to the Aggies. We will see if they can pick up any more hardware on the night. Now let's move on to the freshman of the year. Wade, take it away.
Yeah, so we got a little bit of a mixed group here, some offense, some defense. And all these teams are not contenders. So we're trying to spread the love here on our award show here. But our freshman of the year nominees are Vernell Brown. He is a receiver out of Florida. He really burst on the scene, gave Lagway a reliable target. But unfortunately, the Florida Gator offense just never reached its true full potential. But Vernell Brown's a guy they're going to want to keep around and hope that he can continue to grow into a wide receiver one, maybe a guy that we'll talk about next year in that previous award for wide receiver of the year. Cutter Boley, man, this guy really turned around Kentucky's season. They started with Zach Calzada. That was short-lived. They had Cutter Boley kind of waiting in the wings, a freshman, home state kid. I don't think the expectations were very high, but I think we would both agree that he exceeded them and really had his best game against the Florida Gators as they went on a little bit of an offensive run there and won that game. And then they, of course, also beat Auburn. So Cutter Boley, he's already committed to coming back next year. So I think that's a really good sign for the Wildcats. And then on the defensive side, we got Grayson Littleton. He is a defensive back out of Texas. This Texas defense was really good at times. Some of the better defensive backs in the league, and Littleton was one of them. I think he had a couple interceptions, was amongst the league leaders in passes defended. So a really solid season from him. But at the end of the day, we decided to go with Cutter Boley out of Kentucky. I think that just how difficult it is to be an SEC quarterback, especially as a freshman. I think that really stood out to us, and he really did give this Kentucky team some life and something to get excited behind. And I think with Will Stein coming in officially now as their coach, if he does stay on campus, I mean, I think that we could see this guy make a big sophomore leap.
Yeah, absolutely. Under that Will Stein offense, Cutter Boley could honestly make a leap from being freshman of the year to honestly being in that quarterback of the year discussion, depending on like what transfers maybe come into the SEC and what quarterbacks will be returning. But yeah, this was, not no offense to the other two guys, but man, Cutter Boley at the start of the season, we were like, man, is Zach Calzada really going to be the answer in Kentucky? If you're a Kentucky fan, Boley is going to definitely be the future in Lexington. So Cutter Boley, we actually have a Kentucky player winning an award. I think we had like the receiver
Probably the
Odin
first since
win.
Will Levis.
Yeah, like Will Levis in this one. The running backs, Chris Rodriguez, also as well. So Kentucky has won some awards, but this is the first time that a quarterback has taken the award as the freshman of the year. Now let's move on now to the defensive side of the ball. We've talked a lot about the offense. Now it's time to give the defensive props. So let's start with the free safety of the Alabama Crimson Tide, Bray Hubbard. He was definitely one of the more consistent defensive players in the SEC. And Alabama's defense would start off slow. They really got humming when the month got to October and especially into November. So Bray Hubbard, I mean, he's really been consistently good throughout his collegiate career. Now let's move on to the next guy, a guy who's been familiar in the SEC. He was at LSU last season, now transferred to Auburn, and Xavier Atkins was an absolute beast. Wouldn't be a surprise at all if he lands on the first team All-American on the defensive side. And even national awards, I believe he is up for the Thorpe Award, but I think that Jacob Rodriguez has already taken that. If it wasn't for Rodriguez, it would probably have been Xavier Atkins. I mean, Auburn's defense, you talk about how terrible the offense was. The whole season, the defense was really the heartbeat of this team. And Xavier Atkins really was outstanding this season. And actually, let's go to an LSU player. I'm going to go ahead and say it. This is the only LSU that we have, at least on the positive note. But A.J. Halsey coming from Houston to LSU. This LSU defense under Blake Baker, I mean, turned it around from last year to this year, being a top 20 defense overall this season. I mean, even game number 1 against Clemson, he made a couple of big plays to really set the tone and really set the season. It was a hot start for LSU. Obviously, it got, in a dumpster fire pretty quickly there. But A.J. Halsey, I mean, as bad of his safeties as you've had the past couple of years, it was definitely nice to see a guy like A.J. Halsey make some big plays. I mean, he made some big plays and also some big hits. So A.J. Halsey, also the leading tackler in the SEC, and that's very remarkable for being a safety. So we have 2 safeties, a linebacker, and I hate to say it, honestly, it wasn't even like a discussion. Xavier Atkins was just an absolute beast for this Auburn team. So what do you think about Xavier Atkins, his growth coming from LSU to this Auburn defense under DJ Durkin?
Yeah, I think that he found a system that really fit him and featured him. For whatever reason, it didn't shake out at LSU. I think that him and Brian Kelly had some clashes, and at the end of the day, I think Brian Kelly swung and missed on that because Xavier Atkins was everything. I mean, looked like Devin White out there, if you want a recent comparison, or a Mac Wilson from Alabama, somebody like that. Dante Hightower, just a typical dominant SEC linebacker. So, yeah, job well done for Atkins. He could rush the passer. He could drop in coverage. I think he's got one more year of college, and then he'll be a very high draft pick.
Yeah, probably going to be soared up into the first round if he can put up another big season for this Tigers defense. That is going to get DJ Durkin back. Definitely good news. And with Alex Golesh coming on the offense, with Deuce Knight coming back, if they can retain him, this could be an Auburn team that can make some noise early on in the Golesh era. So we will have to keep an eye out on Auburn. Now let's go on to the Offensive Player of the Year nominees. Obviously, you've already seen these guys in the nominees. Take us to the nominees, I guess, really quickly, because I guess you don't have to really give it a description. But are you going to see Diego Pavia rack up another award here?
Yeah, these guys, they definitely speak for themselves. As we mentioned, all terrific leaders for their offenses. Ahmad Hardy on the ground. Think about what Missouri would have been when they were down to their third string quarterback. I mean, they really needed to rely on Hardy. Diego Pavia almost got this Vanderbilt team to the playoff, and then Kawan Lacey made Ole Miss fans forget about Quinshon Judkins pretty quickly. He broke his record, so all well deserving. But we're gonna go with Diego Pavia because the man can throw for 350 and run for 150. So to me, that's the definition of offensive player of the year. I mean, this Vanderbilt team lives and dies by him. We'll see how they do next year without him, but I mean, man, this guy is the offense.
Well, hell, they got a 5-star flip from Georgia, so I think they're going to be a-okay, and he's already wearing number 2, so maybe that's just going to be a number that become like the number 7 jersey for LSU over there at Vandy. But those were 3 of the best players. It was definitely tricky to come down to this one, but man, Diego Pavia had a sensational year, and Pavia now 2 awards on the night. We'll see if he's going to take home any more hardware. But now let's move on now to the coaches. So you have Clark Lee, the first nominee of Vanderbilt. There's been a lot of Vanderbilt. I mean, I feel like it's the most Vanderbilt nominees that we've had in quite some time. Obviously, honestly, in the running backs, you could have even put Cedric Alexander. He had a good year too. But Clark Lee won the Coach of the Year last year. He's back up here. I mean, Vanderbilt, you take him to 10-2. Honestly, if it wasn't for any other year, they would have been in the college football playoff. They probably should have been in the college football playoff anyways. But with their schedule that they had some big wins. So that is our first nominee. Mike Elko, our second nominee, the head coach of the Aggies, who did sign an extension. So did Clark Lee. Both of these coaches will be staying home for the near future. But Mike Elko, in year number 1, went 8-4. Year 2, 11-1 with the lone loss coming to the Longhorns. But Texas A&M, I mean, that Notre Dame game, I feel like, really set the tone for this team. If they lost it, maybe it would have just been the same old Texas A&M, but they ended up winning that game on a late touchdown. And I feel like from there, Texas A&M really locked in. I mean, they won in every single fashion. Like the Auburn game, they won 16-10, and they had some games where they had to put up plus like over 40 points when their defense was giving up 30 points. So this was a very both on offense and defense, this was a very terrific job for Mike Elko. The future is definitely bright for the Aggies, especially on offense and on defense, because this recruiting class just continues to be at the top of college football. Let's go to our next one, Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. I know he's at LSU, but the overall season for Lane Kiffin, what a job that he did. I mean, last year was supposed to be the year for this Ole Miss team. You bring in the best recruiting class in Ole Miss history, and you lose a couple of games. You lose to Florida, lose to Kentucky, ended up being 9-3 and just getting out of the college football playoff. Heading into this preseason, I don't think a lot of people have this Ole Miss team being 11-1 at this point. I think that you're probably saying, okay, they're good, maybe like a 10-2, 9-3, maybe like just missing the college football playoff. But I mean, Trinidad Chambliss was definitely the story for this team. I mean, Kawan Lacey. The defense did get off to a slow start, but man, Pete Golden has done a terrific job this season for this Ole Miss defense. I mean, the Ole Miss defense last year was probably better overall talent-wise, but this defense has put it together. So I think overall, I know that Ole Miss fans don't want to give praise for Lane Kiffin, but you could step back, look at a rearview mirror that Lane Kiffin did a terrific job in his 6th season at Ole Miss. So we had Clark Lee, Mike Elko, and Lane Kiffin. And ultimately, Mike Elko is going to win this one. It was pretty close between two for all 3 candidates. But it just felt like the turnaround from year 1 to year 2. I mean, Vandy did it last year pretty much. I mean, they were like, 8-4, 7-5 last season, went to 10-2. But this Texas A&M team just felt different overall this season. So what do you think about Mike Elko winning this one? And maybe do you want to talk about the other 2 candidates and what their accomplishments that they had this season?
Yeah, all 3 had terrific seasons. I think Mike Elko finally put it together for Texas A&M. I think they utilized the transfer portal really, really well, and I think they developed a quarterback in-house, which not a lot of teams can say these days. So kudos to Mike Elko. I think that he solidified, that he was a great hire for A&M. I was a little skeptical of it when it happened, but absolutely made great strides here in year two. And I think Clark Lee, I mean, any other year, he's probably winning this. I think he elevated Vanderbilt from what they did a season ago and really turned them into a contender. And Lane Kiffin, I think if things um, ended a little differently, or if he was still at Ole Miss, I mean, he might have won this award as a sixth-ranked team. I think a lot of people thought Ole Miss would slip this season and need a year to rebuild and recoup. But the fact that Lane Kiffin put himself in a position to be so highly sought after
Yeah.
really says a lot about him as a coach and what he did at Ole Miss this year. I think that winning all those games with a Division II transfer quarterback and a really young defense, I mean, I think that shows the kind of program he built. So they're in good hands now with Golding. But Elko is the coach that's in the playoff, and I think he's going to have a good run.
Yep, so much deserved. Mike Elko is the Coach of the Year winner. Now let's move on to the team-specific awards. The first one up is the Surprise Team of the Year. Then will be the most disappointing. So Wade, let's lead us off with the Surprise Team of the Year nominees.
Yep. So all three of these are good surprises, and we just talked about their coaches. So definitely
I
some
didn't even notice that.
correlation there. Yeah, A&M. I mean, like we just talked about, we were waiting for this team to put it together. They always recruit well, but this year they won. They didn't just waste that talent. Likewise, Ole Miss is the self-proclaimed portal wizard, Lane Kiffin. They go out and get the guys they need, and they did that this year with Trinidad Chambliss. But I think a lot of people did think Ole Miss was gonna fall off a little bit, but they were certainly a contender and still are. I mean, they could very well make some noise in the playoff. And then for Vanderbilt, well, as we said, we didn't know if this was going to be a one-hit wonder, Cinderella story, or if Clark Lee and Diego Pavia were going to get this team on the verge of the playoff. So to me, I think that the most surprising thing is that Vanderbilt had sustained success in the SEC from last season to this season, and I think that makes them our surprise team of the year.
Yeah, so Vanderbilt getting another award. Pavia has two on the night. Vanderbilt, I definitely agree with this. You could have made the case for either Texas A&M or Ole Miss, but I think that not many people probably would have said like, oh, they'll probably still have around 7-5, 8-4. They're not going to be like 10-2 or 11-1, but to be 10-2 in the SEC, and they definitely got off to a nice start. I mean, I know that Virginia Tech wasn't that great of a football team, but going on the road to Blacksburg and dominating that one, I feel like that really set the tone for this Vandy offense. They really played well against LSU, and then like that Texas game, I mean, they were down the dumps. They were getting blown out. They ended up crawling all the way back. I mean, they were probably should have had that onside kick recovery, but it's just definitely disappointing that we don't see a team like this make the playoff. And I think that's why expansion is near. But yeah, this is definitely a disappointment that we don't get to see Vandy at least get a chance to really showcase what they got against the best of the best in college football. But Vandy is your surprise team. Now, from the positive, we will go on now to the negative. It feels like South Carolina has been on this graphic. Well, they avoided it last year. They were on the opposite side. Auburn, on the other hand, and LSU have been on this graphic for the past couple of seasons. Auburn, you could say why you were a disappointing team when most of the country had them, like 6-6. But
there's a lot of people that had them going like 8-4,
like myself.
Yeah, so I think they deserve to be on this graphic.
Yeah, I definitely agree with this. I mean, you bring in a guy like Jackson Arnold, you whiff again on quarterbacks, but you do have a nice future, especially with Deuce Knight. You're bringing a guy like Alex Golish, who is another offensive-minded coach. You do have DJ Durkin, one of the more terrific defensive minds in the SEC. So I think that the future is still bright, but this season overall, a lot of close losses. The Oklahoma loss, you have the Alabama loss. I mean, you have the Baylor win. We were like praising them, like, okay, this is going to be a different Auburn team. And nope, as soon as they get an SEC play, it's the same old Auburn team. South Carolina, they got the big win, if you want to call it a big win at this point, against the Hokies to start off the year. Outside of that, I mean, didn't they get blown out by Kentucky in their first, or Vandy? I can't even remember who they got blown out in Columbia early on this season. and then you put up 10 points against an LSU defense. So really, there's not really many positives. Like mainly the one game where I actually thought they had a pulse was the Alabama game, and then they blew it. So South Carolina, I think next year is do or die for Shane Beamer. It sounds like they are bringing in Art Briles from TCU. So that's definitely a better offensive mind than you already had with Mike Shula. So we will see what the Gamecocks. I mean, we'll see what Lenora Sellers ultimately has decided to do. Does he stay in Columbia or does he go somewhere else? I guess we will have to see once the portal opens up in January. And then LSU, who was a preseason top 10. You get a big win at the time. I mean, everybody was praising them on every network, like, oh, this is a different LSU team. They're going to be a national title contender. And both teams just shit the bed, let's be honest with you. Clemson is playing in the Pinstripe Bowl. LSU is playing in the Texas Bowl. I think both of those teams were at the preseason. We thought it was going to be in the 12-team playoff. And I just want to talk about that matchup. I mean, we have Penn State and Clemson in the Pinstripe Bowl. And
I didn't even know that.
That would have been
I didn't even
national
know
title game. But LSU finishing the season at 7-5. Another season disappointment under Brian Kelly. That's why he's no longer the head coach. And you're trying to revamp. I mean, this was a disaster, at least on one side of the ball. Offense was as bad. Shoot, even it was worse. I would rather watch 50,000 toss dives by Les Miles' offense than watch this 2025 version of LSU's offense ever again in my life. So that being said, LSU is the most disappointing team of the year. To be honest with you, it wasn't even close. South Carolina, I had them like 9-3, 8-4 the preseason. Same with Auburn. I had LSU. I drank the Kool-Aid. I had this team at 10-2 making the college football playoff. I was dead wrong.
A lot of people did.
Probably many in the country. But Wade, do you agree with this pick? I'm sure everybody in the graphic ahead of us, but it just feels like LSU was clearly the most disappointing team out of all the SEC teams this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because you hear all this stuff about LSU, the sky's falling, and at the end of the day, this team went 7-5. Like they were probably one fourth down conversion away from going 8-4 and knocking Oklahoma out of the playoff. But it was just such a lackluster season. This team never scored over 25 points.
That's maybe they'll do it in the bowl game. Who knows?
I mean, come on, it's just bad. Garrett Nussmeier was the Heisman favorite. Didn't even finish the season as the starting quarterback. Caden Durham fell into a running back committee. The defense was a bright spot for sure. And then Brian Kelly getting canned, 4 seasons into a 9-year contract?
10 years.
Just 10-year contract, just really bad stuff. So yeah, 7-5 isn't in the world. South Carolina fans would have been thrilled with 7-5, but look, this is LSU. This is supposed to be a championship contending team. So by that definition, they are the most disappointing.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is our team awards. Now let's go on out to the game of the year nominees. This is always a stacked category every single year. Last year, it was Georgia versus Alabama. So Wade, give us our 3 game of the years and overall winner.
Yeah. So a little bit of a mixed bag here. I'll try to set the scene for each game. Ole Miss and Georgia. Ole Miss was undefeated. They went on the road to play at Georgia. They had just come off of a big win against LSU, which we thought was a big win at the time. Trinidad Chambliss lore was growing, and they got out to a big lead against Georgia. But then Georgia hung in there. They battled back with Gunnar Stockton. Trinidad Chambliss, I think the crowd noise started to get to him for sure. And Georgia was able to pull off a miraculous comeback and march on to the SEC championship game, as they always do. Now, one cool thing is we're going to probably get to see this game again in the second round of the playoff in New Orleans. That will be a treat for sure. But one thing I wanted to bring up during the preview is it really fair to judge Ole Miss's entire success off of their ability to play Georgia? Because, I mean, they could lose 2 games this whole year, and it could be both to Georgia. I mean, come on, that's not really fair. But that was a good game. Auburn and Vanderbilt, this was another thrilling game. high scoring game, which we did not expect with those two teams, that's for sure. But, Auburn found its offense through Ashton Daniels, who was their other transfer quarterback that they took in behind Jackson Arnold, and Diego Pavia did Diego Pavia things. He threw for like 400 yards in this one, and Vanderbilt saved their season with an overtime victory against Auburn. And our last nominee, South Carolina versus Texas A&M. If you were watching college football, you might have saw at the bottom of the ESPN scoreboard ticker that South Carolina was up 31-0 against Texas A&M. Wild. And that was the score at halftime, I think. And Texas A&M just absolutely stormed back and erased the entire 30-point deficit and won this game by 1 point. And at the time, I mean, it looked like it just saved them an embarrassing loss. Mm-hmm. But if you think about it now, if A&M lost that game, they might not have made it. Yeah. So that was a really big game because South Carolina, I mean, that just crushed them. They only won one more game after that. If A&M lost that, I mean, that would be one of the worst losses for anybody in the playoff, maybe besides Alabama losing to Florida State. So, and in hindsight, I mean, that was a very crucial win for A&M.
Yeah.
I think you and I are both suckers for comebacks. So our game of the year is the South Carolina Texas A&M game.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, we would be having this discussion between Texas A&M and Notre Dame being that last representative in the playoff if the Aggies did not come back and say, like, if South Carolina just beat the doors off them in College Station, it might have been A&M being left out of the playoff because look at this overall, this was definitely a huge game. But, I mean, the comebacks, I mean, if you get a 31-point comeback, you're going to win this award every single year. And South Carolina and Texas A&M, that was fireworks in a game that I don't think a lot of people really had circled. Probably a lot of people saying, like, oh, Texas A&M is just going to beat the doors off South Carolina. But this was definitely the game of the year, in our opinion. Now let's move on now to the play of the year. This kind of ties into the game of the year. Obviously, we also had some other game of the years, like both games that Mississippi State was involved in, like the Texas and Mississippi State game was definitely up there. Arizona State, Mississippi State, Tennessee, Mississippi State. I mean, Mississippi State has some thrilling games. Obviously, get into the play of the year. But Texas A&M's game-winning touchdown versus Notre Dame, like I hinted at, this win really vaulted Texas A&M having the season that they had. This is the type of games in the past that Texas A&M would choke away and lose. Going back to this game, like Tyler Buchner dropped that PAT and they missed it, and ultimately that PAT probably kept Notre Dame out of the playoff. So thanks, Tyler Buchner. But Texas A&M was able to drive down the field. Marcel Reed on 4th and goal. Got it to one of their tight ends. I'm not even going to try and pronounce his last name. I just know that he's an Illinois transfer tight end, which had an awesome season for the Aggies. So that is our first play of the year. Next one is Oklahoma. Man, they are just the king of blocking field goals this season. I feel like they have one in pretty much every game, it feels like. But Oklahoma blocked a field goal against Alabama, and that was ultimately the deciding factor in that 23-21 game against Alabama. Going to be excited to watch that rematch. And we have Mississippi State representation in our awards. Their game-winning touchdown versus Arizona State. Arizona State crawled all the way back. Mississippi State was dominating this one in the first half like they've had in pretty much like a couple of these games. Like I mentioned, Arizona State stormed all the way back, took the lead, and Mississippi State, was able actually, Arizona State, they just took the lead with just over a minute left, and with 37 seconds, Blake Shapen found. His name is escaping me right now. I'm sorry about this, but Mississippi State's game winning
Anderson, I think.
I don't think it was Anderson. I'm sorry about this, but Mississippi State, you're gonna get an award because that was an unreal play. I was watching this one. I thought that Mississippi State was gonna blow it, and with 37 seconds,
Brendan Thompson.
Yes, thank you. Brennan Thompson, who is one of the fastest receivers in the SEC. Mississippi State's game-winning touchdown versus Arizona State ultimately got into a bowl game. They're going to the Mayonnaise Bowl against Wake Forest. We'll get into that
Saw
over the
that.
next couple of weeks. But overall, this was a very nice season for Mississippi State. I know that honestly, they probably should have two more wins against Tennessee and Texas if that overtime games would have went the other way. Should have been like a 7-5 team that we're looking at. But overall, step in the right direction with Jeff Levy. I mean, anything's better than going 0-4 in the SEC. Their one win was against Arkansas, if to mind that. But Mississippi State's game-winning touchdown, Brennan Thompson against Arizona State was the play of the year. Now let's move on to our SEC Fantasy Player of the Year nominees. Since Wade is a sucker for SEC Fantasy, why don't you take it away?
So yeah, this award is specific to their performance in SEC Fantasy. I mean, obviously, SEC Fantasy correlates to on-field success, but you do see some new faces here. These were all guys that we were itching to use week after week, and just racked up a lot of yards for us. I mean, look at Kawan Lacey. He was consistently a 100 spot if you got him in SEC Fantasy. If you didn't get Ahmad Hardy, you wanted Kawan Lacey, and then if it became you wanted Kawan Lacey because he just hit a whole nother level. And I think he also led the SEC in touchdowns. So if we counted touchdowns for SEC Fantasy, that would have been insane. Joey Aguilar, I mean, he was one of the only quarterbacks, I think, that consistently put up 300 yards, averaging over 300 yards a game. Pavia had his moments, Marcel Reed had his moments, but those guys also had multiple games under 150 yards passing, including some weeks that we took them. But Aguilar, I mean, he was a sure thing for sure. And I think Tennessee lucked out in the transfer portal with him. I think that he fit the offense better than what they had with Nico. So good job there for Tennessee. And then Isaiah Satenga. I mean, we didn't talk about him in our receiver nominees. We ended up going with Jeremy Bernard for that third spot, but I think you could make a case for Satenga. I mean, he did it all for Oklahoma. Really, their only threat as a receiver. But he had some really nice weeks for me as well. But at the end of the day, I mean, I think it's Kawan Lacey's turn to win an award. The running back position was just so deep this year, and sharing a lot of categories with Ahmad Hardy's tough. But I mean, Kawan Lacey, he was the dude at running back for most of the season, and did it against really good teams as well. It wasn't just cupcake matchups. So Kawan Lacey, and guess where he came from? Missouri. So,
Missouri.
Man, they got some running backs in that
Missouri backs, man.
pipeline.
Yeah, but it would have just been a complete disservice if Kawan Lacey didn't walk out of here with an award. I think, we want to talk about Lacey and Hardy, but Mike Washington, every time that I picked him SC Fantasy was also consistent 100. Same with Taylor Green. Taylor Green could have been on this list too. But Satenga, I know that we didn't talk about in the wide receivers, but if you needed a big play of Oklahoma, because if they didn't get that big play against LSU, then Oklahoma's probably not even in the 12-team playoff, potentially, with 3 losses. So that was definitely a big play for them. And, when, like I mentioned, when they needed a big play, they went to Satenga. But, yeah, Kawan Lacey put up 20 touchdowns. In SEC in fantasy terms, that'll play, fella. That'll play. But Kawan Lacey, Missouri running backs. We'll see. Ahmad Hardy has got one more year of eligibility. So we're going to have one more year of Ahmad Hardy. I'm sure that we're going to have a lot. I mean, this was just a year of running backs, in my opinion, for SEC Fantasy. It's not anything to do with the receivers and the quarterbacks, but I would take any of these guys in the SEC against any of the other league running backs. So that is all of our awards. Congratulations to all of our nominees and our winners. Why am I going? Okay, I thought I was going backwards, but now let's move on away from the awards and get into some hot topics, and then we will close the book on this week's show. So first up, some big news out of Baton Rouge. Lane Kiffin is slowly but surely building his staff. I got most of his defensive staff. Still an unknown who's going to be the RB coach. I guess we'll find out over the next couple of days, maybe weeks. But Blake Baker is staying put as LSU's defensive coordinator. He did have an interview with both Tulane, the head coaching job, as well as the Memphis head coaching job. But Blake Baker staying under a contract extension, I believe, worth 3 years, $9 million. So this is definitely huge news if you're an LSU fan. Blake Baker has continuously upgraded this defense. The one thing that he struggles with, and what LSU has been struggling with, it feels like for the past decade, has been against the running quarterback. We will see if they can get the guys maybe in the transfer portal or not, that they can, flip the script on that. But what do you think about this news that Blake Baker is returning to this defense?
Yeah, I think it's really good news for LSU. I think that they made a lot of headway on improving that defense this year. I think that the secondary especially has some really nice returning talent next year that they can capitalize on. Should have both starting cornerbacks back, should have one of the starting safeties back, and then really a second starting safety in a way. I mean, Tamar Cooley was in there more often than not with Deshaun Spears, so you'll have those guys back. So a lot of good pieces. You'll have your leader at Whitweeks at linebacker back as well. So it's going to be about getting some interior defensive linemen, I think. And I think this team could be in really good shape if they do that.
Yeah, so let's go on now to another defensive coordinator returning. Zach Arnett had a stint of being Mississippi State's DC as well as head coach. We also saw that at Virginia Tech, which is just weird. Like, you fire Brent Pry and James Franklin, why don't you come back and be our defensive coordinator? So Zach Arnett back at Mississippi State. Mississippi State's defense, the first half of the season was okay. After that, once they got to SEC play, it was abysmal. So Zach Arnett, he's a fantastic defensive coordinator. This is definitely a good hire. What are your overall thoughts on him returning to Starkville?
Yeah, I think for Zach Arnett and Brent Pry, you could say, some guys are just good at what they do and what they specialize in, but it doesn't necessarily make them a head coach. And I think that's the case for both of those guys. Their specialties, coach and defense. So nothing wrong with going back to it at a place that you are fond of. And I think that combined with Jeff Levy's offensive prowess, I mean, I think this team could be much improved.
And especially with Kamario Taylor at the quarterback, this offense, I think, is just going to excel next year. If you can get some guys back on defense, I think this could definitely be a team that it's not going to get a bowl game being 5-7. This could be like a 7+ win team heading into the 2026 season. Speaking of 2026, the 2026 SEC schedule will be released on Thursday night on the SEC Network. Have a planned show for that. So, Wade, I know that you're a big, on the schedules. You had that project where you were plugging and playing all these opponents. So what are you most looking forward to? The schedules, some matchups that we were probably going to be getting. And I guess maybe on the LSU side, more personal, what matchups are you looking to line up? Obviously, that LSU Ole Miss game, you're probably going to need the FBI that game.
Yeah. No, I am excited for this format. I think that it's going to be interesting for sure. It's going to be weird not playing some of these teams every year, but we kind of already got over that. And it'll be cool to see some teams come back on the schedule like Mississippi State and Auburn next year for LSU. But timing definitely is everything. So it'll be interesting to see how early in Lane Kiffin's tenure we play Ole Miss, whether that will be an early season game or more of an end-of-the-year battle. And then across the conference, I mean, I think that it'll be interesting to see, Georgia and Florida. Do they keep that in the middle of the season? Do they respect some of these traditional rivalries like Tennessee and Georgia playing at a certain time, Auburn and Georgia playing at a certain time? I just don't know what all they'll be able to respect with this new format, but I am looking forward to it for sure.
There is one thing that I want to look forward to. Put the damn Egg Bowl back on Thanksgiving night. Like, come on. I know that the NFL is always trying to take over the Thanksgiving day, but come on, man. Give me some after I stuff my face with turkey and stuff. Give me the Egg Bowl.
Yeah.
Back in its place. But I guess we'll find out on Thursday if that comes to fruition. I'm not going to hold my breath for that to happen. Let's go back to the college football playoff discussion. And with all this being said, I know that this is probably going to happen at some point, but do you think that the college football playoff should be expanded? And if so, how many teams should be in the field?
I think 16 would be good. I
Yeah.
mean,
Please do
like we
not do like
talked about.
24, 32, and all this.
Yeah, I mean, I think 16 is good. That would cover all the two-loss teams, I think.
Yeah.
And um, I think you could reasonably have the group of five champion in there. Like we talked about though, this was just such a weird circumstance with how the ACC tiebreakers broke down. I mean, you could have had a very happy 12 team field this year had Miami won the ACC outright. I mean, some Texas fans and Vanderbilt fans might have a gripe, but I think that there was a sound argument against those teams. But for better or for worse, Notre Dame, they do have a rightful gripe. They felt like it was ripped out from them. So I think 16 would kind of alleviate some of those concerns. I got one last hot topic for you though.
Sure.
All right, who's hosting that Heisman Trophy on Saturday?
I think it's just going to be Fernando Mendoza. I just feel like the winner of that game was going to lock it up. I think that Diego out of the SEC has a claim for it, but it just feels like it's been the year of Indiana and the year of Fernando Mendoza.
I think you're right, but Diego's more flashy. It's not like Mendoza lit up the scoreboard on Saturday, and maybe he'll get some. Maybe Diego will get some votes for sympathy for missing out on the playoff. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that that's a real possibility. But yeah, I think we'll probably see Mendoza, Diego Pavia, Julian Sayin, and maybe a wild card like Jacob Rodriguez at the 4 spot.
Yeah, I definitely think you may even see Jeremiah Love
Yeah,
maybe get an invite. The same thing with Notre Dame. Give him
vote.
and maybe get some pity votes there. But some other hot topics outside, obviously, let's say inside the conference too. I know that we said last week's show that Kentucky was targeting Will Stein. That is finalized. I think that you and I both agree that's a great hire. And I think with Cutter Boley coming back, this offense could really make some noise, don't you think, in 2026?
Yeah, I think that they did a good job. I think they were probably content with rolling back with Mark Stoops, but when they saw that nobody hired their guy in that coaching cycle, they were like, "Let's go get him. It's now or never." Because he might not have been there next year. He could have been a candidate at some larger schools. So kudos to the Wildcats. I think Carter Boley sticking around, that could be really good for them.
And did have a former SEC coach, Billy Napier, is now going to take over James Madison. So Sunbelt Billy is back in his rightful place. I think that he's definitely going to take over a terrific program, James Madison. You're seeing what Chesney's doing. Chesney's going to be taking over UCLA. So I think that's going to be a nice hire for James Madison. We should see the Dukes continue because, I mean, they've been made this quick jump from the FCS to the FBS. They were very powerhouse in the FCS, and you've seen what they've been able to build in the Sun Belt. You also finally saw Penn State make a hire. They were the first one open. Matt Campbell is their guy from Iowa State. Iowa State feels like Matt Campbell has been there for 10 plus years at this point. It feels like he's been there forever. But what do you think about that hire? You think that was the right hire? You go from a guy like James Franklin, who's consistently winning 10 games. Obviously, they won more than that. What do you think about Matt Campbell taking over Penn State?
I mean this in the nicest way, but Penn State hired James Franklin. I mean, nothing wrong with
Matt Campbell against top 25 teams. It's only one more win than James Franklin.
Yeah, and I didn't even know that, and I'm not surprised by it. I like Matt Campbell as a coach. I like James Franklin as a coach. I just think they're very similar in their results. I don't really see that as an elevating hire, other than the fact that we haven't seen Matt Campbell have a program of this caliber. We have seen it with James Franklin, but you can't really say that James Franklin didn't elevate Penn State. I mean, he got them to the Final Four last year. Were they disappointing this year? Absolutely. Did they waste talent this year? Absolutely. But, James Franklin was a proven program builder. He got them to the Final Four. It just didn't pan out this year. I kind of thought it was a premature firing unless you had a guy absolutely lined up that was a slam dunk. and clearly they didn't because it took them 3 months to hire a coach. And I think they landed on a good candidate. I don't know that Matt Campbell is any different or an improvement of James Franklin, other than the fact that maybe he's motivated because he hasn't had a job of this caliber.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to find out. But we did have another hiring in the Big 12, Colin Klein, who was now
That's
the
a good
Texas
fit.
A&M offense coordinator, going to Kansas State with Chris Kleiman retiring. So that's a nice hire. I mean, Colin Klein, it's crazy that he was like a couple of years ago, we were watching him on the field. Going back to Manhattan. Now
Maybe
let's go.
Mariota can be the OC at Oregon.
Yeah, maybe so. But let's go on now to some bowl opt-outs. Obviously, Iowa State, Kansas State is announced, and today it was announced Notre Dame has opted out of playing the bowl game. I know that you wanted to talk about Notre Dame. I believe that this was the main talking points. That's why you wanted to bring up the Fighting Irish, because they were not happy whatsoever, both that the players and the coaches, that they got left out.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I understand the frustration for sure. I mean, they were ranked inside the top 10 every week, and they got it pulled out from underneath them. But Notre Dame is just so pompous, man. I mean, look, everybody else is in a conference. You think you're above the law. You don't join a conference, and they're just supposed to put you in the playoff. Not the case. I mean, you dug your own grave there. And then your response is, oh, well, now we're just above you and all your stupid little bowl games. I mean, come on, guys. You're just making yourselves very unlikable, more unlikable than you already were. Join a conference, put up and shut up is my motto on this. I mean, part of not being in a conference is you get to create your own schedule, and they did not
And it
create
wasn't
a
that
hard
great of a schedule. I mean, you played A&M, Miami, you lost both of them, and you didn't play anybody outside of that.
Right. I mean, not.
You're playing
an
Navy every
impressive
year.
resume.
You're playing BC. Like, play somebody outside of that and actually beat them and don't lose them.
Yeah, they played 2 playoff teams. They lost the games. It's unfortunate that the ACC screwed up and it cost Notre Dame a spot. But I mean, they have nobody to blame but themselves. And I just hate this mentality of bowl games don't matter. I mean, I think in Notre Dame's case, they are a contender, and this is a disappointment. But like, here we go. We're gonna have all these opt outs.
Yep.
And it's like your team never had national championship aspirations. Like, this is your reward. This is the pinnacle of your program. Go play the Orange Bowl. Go play the Pop-Tart Bowl, because
And what the
usually
hell? Out of all the bowl games, it wasn't just any bowl game. It was a Pop-Tarts Bowl that they declined. Come on.
well, they weren't going to be fun. They were going to be sticks in the mud. So I
Hey,
don't
at
know.
least we got a great matchup. BYU, Georgia Tech. I'd much rather that than a team bitching and
2
moaning
teams
because
that
they didn't
will
get
want
a
to be.
playoff bid.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, Florida State played the game. I know that a lot of players opted out, but they still played the game. And that was even like more of a disgrace because they were 13-0 and they got, Alabama jumped them just because Jordan Travis got injured.
That it definitely reads like it's an administration and a coaching decision. You can't convince me that every single player in that Notre Dame locker room agrees with that decision. I mean, there's guys that are walk-ons that would have loved to suit up in that game. There's guys that are seniors that played against Stanford, whoever their final game was, and they had no clue that was the last time they were putting on that Notre Dame uniform. And for that, that's just messed up as a coach to do that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's pretty simple, Notre Dame. Should have beat Miami. If you would have beat Miami, wouldn't even have a discussion. Honestly,
should have held on to that PAT.
Yeah, for real. That Texas A&M game, honestly, was the one. Like, they had that game pretty locked up, and Texas A&M was able to drive down the field. And like you mentioned, that PAT was ended up the difference. They lost by 1 point. That was all
and
they
they missed
needed.
it by 1 spot.
You could think, yeah, but yeah, geez. But I think that's enough for our show tonight. A lot of Notre Dame talk. We're gonna throw away Notre Dame because we're SEC talk.
Their season's over.
Their season's over. We don't have to talk about them. So bye-bye. Enjoy your off season, and we'll see you next year when you're 10-2 and you'll lose in the second round. So we'll see you once again here on SEC Talk. In a more positive side, since we don't have to talk about Notre Dame anymore, we will talk about all of our SEC teams that are involved. We'll also talk about all of the playoff games. We're not going to talk about all the bowl games because that's going to take forever. So we are just going to strictly focus on all of our SEC representatives and all of the other bowl games. So next week will be more playoff focus. And then the weeks after that, we will focus on like the quarterfinals and all that, and then the rest of the bowl games. And SEC Fantasy will be returning next week as our rosters will be doubling, and whoever wins that one will take the prize in this 2025 season. So I appreciate everybody for tuning into this Sunday night edition. We'll see you back here next week as we dive more into our postseason talk right here on SEC Talk. So enjoy the rest of your night, and we'll see you next time.